Hello, everybody. Welcome to Little Mouse Podcast. 欢迎光临你们朋友，台湾、中国的朋友、香港的朋友，谢谢你们参加。So today, I'm going to continue with the podcast talking about the Little Red Book and Marxism. I'm going to go into great lengths about that. And then I'm also going to be talking about crushing facts. Little Mao's core principle is no speech, no life. 没有言论，没有自由啊。And also what I'd like to do is, so this is the core principle. 这个就是核心的原则的小猫的 podcast。然后呢，我要给你们那个评论关于那个马克思主义。So what I'd like to talk about also before I get started, besides the core principles and Little Red Book and crushing facts, is I thought it would be fun to mention Nietzsche. So Nietzsche has a really good quote. He says, "Without music, life would be a mistake." So I see music as a logical extension of free speech. So if you don't have free speech, you don't have music, and if you don't have music, life is a mistake. So in Chinese, you would say, 没有音乐就是生活是一个错误。So that's a basic premise, and I think that's important. Also relating to Marxism, I would also like to quote another Nietzsche quote. And Nietzsche says that everybody is the unconscious exponent of a dead philosopher. So there are echoes of Marxism among pseudo-intellectuals in the United States, academia circles, and there's also China, which is an echo of Marxist doctrine. And we're going to talk about that in greater detail. And as I stated before, we're going to talk about metalize. We're going to expose metalize. Metalize 就是那个好色的说谎啊，就是要给你们吃事. So we're going to be going into that. And so on to Marxism. So the whole idea of a argument against Marxism would be that defend your logos, defend your brain, and don't be a hijacked ideologue. Think for yourself, make your own opinions, and understand what Marxism is. So, as I stated in the previous podcast, if you read the Communist Manifesto, there's not one single proposition that's self-evident. It's 胡说八道，马克思主义的观念的哲学就是胡说八道，就是莫名其妙。你看那个共产党的观念，那个马克思就是胡说八道。So I'm going to make some comments about Marxism relating to the Little Red Book. Here we have 最高指示，就是the highest command, the highest directives. That's what it says on this book. No more Mao. All those bow before Chairman Mao, right? Let's read about some of the ideas and the damage this caused. So I'm going to read quotation 3 and 4 today. And I also, before I start, I want to talk about National Socialism. I want to talk about Marxism. And I want to talk about 4 truths behind Marxism and National Socialism. So the first thing I'd like to say is 马克思主义就有一个目的，就是保护土匪我跟小偷，就是一个目的啊。So here are the 4 truths behind it in English. Marxism feeds and breeds on corruption. 就是有一个目的，就是保护腐败的情况，遗传模式，就是要保护那个小偷的观念啊。So that's the first thing. Number 2, Marxism feeds and breeds on conflict, tribalism. 阶级解无产 in Chinese, which is class conflict, which turns into identity conflict, which causes millions of deaths. So if we look at the 20th century, we know that in China alone, there were 80 million deaths due to Marxist ideology and communist ideology, National Socialism experimentation, brought about the death of roughly 80 million people. That's a lot, right? 80 million. 是8,000万的人就死掉了 during this time. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. And I'd also like to say that absolute corruption corrupts absolutely. That's the direction it seems to be going. If we look at corruption in many of these countries like Venezuela, Cuba, China today, it's just pure corruption. So that's it. So in reading the quotation number 3 and 4 under communism, I'm going to read that now. And so quotation number 3. 没有中国共产党的努力，没有中国共产党人做中国人民的种人。I'll start again. 没有中国共产党的努力，没有中国共产党人做中国人民的中流砥柱。中国的独立和解放是不可能的。中国的工业化和农业近代化也是不可能的。So here in this quotation, he's talking about agricultural modernization, and that only through communism can they achieve the success that they want to achieve. And the fourth quotation. 中国共产党是全中国人民的领导核心。So the leadership's central core principle, 没有这样的一个核心，社会主义事业就不能胜利。So only through socialism can they be victorious. Again, the result was 80 million dead. So I don't think that was victory. And I want to give you a more exact translation of those quotations, quotation number 3 and 4. So without the efforts of the Chinese Communist Party, without the Chinese Communists as a mainstay of the Chinese people, China can never achieve independence and liberation or industrialization and the modernization of agriculture. So the result was, this is a lie. 80 million people died. They were incompetent. It was corrupt. And that's what it does. Quotation number 4. The Chinese Communist Party is the core leadership of the whole Chinese people. Without this core, the cause of socialism cannot be victorious. It was victorious. It was victorious in killing 80 million people. That's the glory of Xiao Hongshu. Their victory was nothing but death and destruction. So in today's China, must wonder, the echoes of Marxism and the continued promulgation of it is really scary. Those are the only comments I'm going to give you on the Little Red Book today. It's very interesting. I think it's interesting to know exactly what we're talking about when we say Marxism, when we talk about socialism. As stated, the modern agricultural revolution and the cultural revolution was a complete disaster, and everybody knows this. And the Marxist ideology is outlined in this book, and it's still being promoted today, which I don't understand. But that's what's happening, and that's what I just reviewed with you. So, crushing facts. 全中国11人都真正实施. So, crushing facts we're going to talk about today. Crushing fact number 1. Fentanyl. According to James Carroll, the former director of the Office of National Drug and Control Policy, these drugs, we're talking about fentanyl, these drugs are coming in. Here's a direct quote from him. These drugs are coming in and are killing 70,000 Americans a year. That's like one commercial airplane going down every day. Fentanyl, the most illegal fentanyl in the world comes from China, which means Beijing 就是一个narco州. It's a narco state. The entire country is a narco state. Not very inspiring to think about it. So you have Marxists and communists in control that has turned into a narco state. And the goal is to protect that power. So talking about fentanyl a little bit, according to the facts that I've outlined in this interview, in the interview that I read, 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. And that's all I want to say about it. And according to James Carroll, it's state-sponsored. If Beijing was interested in cracking down on this, it could end tomorrow. But they have no interest in that. That's not the goal. The next crushing fact I want to talk about is killer whales, breeding killer whales and the captivity of killer whales. In 2016, SeaWorld stopped the breeding programs. While that happened, or since that time, Zhonghong Group buys controlling stake in SeaWorld for $449 million. That's right. Zhonghong Group controls a majority stake in SeaWorld, $449 million they paid, and they in turn decided to continue the breeding program in China today. They're also getting killer whales from Russia. Russia is selling them to the Chinese. The exact number, no one's really sure. You can research this. I'll give you a bunch of links at the bottom. You can research it on your own. I saw a number of 13 or 16 wild orcas were caught and sold to China, to the Zhonghong Group. So, as SeaWorld mouths to you that they have stopped the orca program, it's controlled by the Zhonghong Group in China, and it continues. The breeding program is expanding in China, and China plans to expand killer whale captivity and the shows. I think this is one of the most cruel things that humanity has ever done, is to capture and breed orca killer whales. But interesting fact, most people don't realize that SeaWorld is controlled by the Chinese, and they're expanding the orca programs in China today, and it's going to continue that way for a while. Next thing I want to talk about is really interesting. I want to talk about environmental issues, crushing fact. According to a 2014-15 report from Berkeley Earth, a prestigious nonprofit environmental research group, China's air pollution, 4,400 people die per day of air pollution in China, 1.6 million per year. I think that's really startling. I thought that was an interesting fact I wanted to share with you guys. The WHO doesn't seem to be, as of late, a credible organization on certain information, but maybe you'll find something I wasn't able to find on current numbers. I do have current numbers from the WHO back, well, not current, but I have numbers from the WHO from 2009 or 10. I think they had reported something like 600,000 people died from air pollution each year. But that was from 2008, 2009 report. But anyway, Berkeley Earth, that's where that information comes from. Last thing I want to talk about that's really intriguing to me is the Black Book of Communism, published by Harvard Press. I want to go over the numbers of people murdered under communism and socialism, ideology, and doctrine. Vietnam, 1 million. Eastern Europe, 1 million. Ethiopia, 1.5 million. Cambodia, 2 million. North Korea, 2 million. USSR, the numbers are around 20 million, but it's actually, if you read Solzhenitsyn, it's probably around 20 to 60 million if you consider the Ukraine famine. In China, somewhere between 65 to 80 million were murdered underneath Marxism. So some interesting facts. Again, that's from the Black Book of Communism, Harvard Press. And the last point, the last crushing fact, Zoehoda, which is, which developing country today is practicing what could be considered slavery, forced labor? Which country would it be that practices slavery? China. So if you look at Xinjiang province, you look at the internment camps, this is forced labor, this is slavery, they have no rights, they have no freedoms. Some people have been murdered, some people have been killed, some people have been sterilized. Those are a lot of the reports out there. I encourage you to research this yourself, but when I hear people talk about slavery, it amazes me that no one talks about China as a modern slave country and a narco state. So that's all I have for you guys today in this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you thought it was interesting. And I just want to say thank you all. And just remember, no speech, no life. Peace out. And for my friends in Asia, 没有言论，没有自由。谢谢你们参加，再见。Thank you. Bye bye.